Grand Rising, baby girl. Come on over here and sit with me for a minute. I grew up in Mississippi. I know Mississippi. I know the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. And the older I've gotten, the more I've come to understand Mississippi. See, when you're a child, there are some things you notice, but you just can't explain. Then you grow up, life gives you wisdom, and suddenly those moments you've carried for years, they begin to make sense. That's why my heart has been so heavy these past few days. Not because of social media, not because of politics, not because of arguments, but because of a young man named Nolan Xavier Wells. Baby girl, before we talk about how he died, let's honor how he lived. His name was Nolan Xavier Wells, 18 years old, a beloved son, a grandson, a college student majoring in business at Southwest Mississippi Community College, a gifted wide receiver, an outstanding football player. But football wasn't the first thing people talked about when they described Nolan. Football was something he did. Character was who he was. They talked about his heart. They talked about his smile. They talked about his kindness, his respect for other folks, his humility, his work ethic, his willingness to encourage those around him. His mama called him a special soul and said the Most High took his time creating her son. Now, that's the kind of legacy every parent prays their child leaves behind. And did you notice something else? When Nolan went missing, law enforcement came. The Coast Guard came. Search teams came. Volunteers came. Neighbors came. Houses of worship prayed. Strangers prayed. An entire community held on to hope that somehow this young man would make it back home. Baby girl, that's because before there was an investigation, there was a life. Before there were opinions, there was a son. Before there were headlines, there was a family who loved him with everything they had. Let's never forget that. Now, some folks are awfully quick to dismiss conversations that make them uncomfortable, and just as quick to make assumptions they're not qualified to make. To those who keep asking, why does everything have to be about race? Because for many of us, race has always been part of the story. It was part of my story when I couldn't understand why I wasn't welcome at certain classmates' homes, even though we laughed together at school. See, some of those classmates may even be watching this today. You may not remember, or maybe you choose not to, but I remember. I remember not being welcome in a classmate's yard, let alone her home. It was part of my story when a little first grade girl told my black son not to touch her because he was black. It was part of my story when someone looked me in my face and called me a racial slur no human being should ever have to hear. Those aren't opinions, those are memories, those are facts, those are experiences. And experiences shape how we see the world. Now hear me carefully. I'm not saying every tragedy is about race. I'm not saying I know what happened to Nolan because I don't. And once again, neither do you. The investigation is still ongoing, and I sincerely pray there was nothing more than a heartbreaking accident. If that's where the facts lead, then let the truth stand. But don't ask folks who look like me to ignore the truths we've lived with for generations. History has taught many of us to ask questions. History has taught many of us to hope and to be cautious at the very same time. And please stop saying, I don't see color. I need you to see my brown skin. I need you to see Nolan's brown skin. Not because our skin tells you everything about us, but because pretending not to see it ignores the reality that throughout history, the color of our skin has too often shaped our experiences, our opportunities, our treatment, and sometimes even the way our stories are told. Maybe you've never experienced that, and if you haven't, I'm genuinely thankful. But many of us have. The work I do has taught me something social media never will. Social media is not real life. Every single day, I meet folks carrying burdens you never know by scrolling through their pictures. I've learned that through the truth that it's often quieter than the loudest voices on the internet. Whether Nolan's death proves to be a tragic accident or whether investigators uncover something more, one thing will never change. A family is grieving. A chair at the table is forever empty. A future has been forever interrupted. So before this becomes another argument, another hashtag, or another headline, remember that a young man lived. Know how he died when the facts are known. But never forget how he lived. I'm praying that the Most High wraps the Wells family in peace that only He can give. I'm praying that investigators leave no stone unturned. I'm praying that truth is uncovered, whether it leads to a bad outcome, an accident, whatever it is. Because the truth should never be feared or hidden. See, baby girl, wisdom doesn't rush to conclusions, but it doesn't ignore history either. Wisdom has enough compassion to grieve, enough humility to wait for the facts, and enough courage to keep seeking the truth. Until next time, keep your head high, your crown straight, and always remember whose you are. And baby girl, if you can't be a blessing, be a lesson.